When you retire, you may get a chance to go to football heaven. This is football heaven.
Hey guys, welcome to The Mission. I'm your host, Jameer Howerton, and we hope that you've been enjoying our Award of Excellence series of getting to know the members of this year's inaugural class. Well, as we wrap up this series, so far you had the opportunity to hear from members of the public relations, equipment manager, and athletic trainers categories. Well, today we're going back on the field. We're honoring the men that stand behind their head coaches, the coaches that are responsible for so many NFL careers. And at a moment's notice, they're ready to jump into being an interim head coach. But helping me honor the recipients of this year's Award of Excellence for the assistant coaches category is no other than former head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Indianapolis Colts, Super Bowl 41 champion, and from the class of 2016, Tony Dungy is joining us right here on The Mission. Well, Coach, welcome to The Mission. It's always great to see you. Thank you so much for giving us your time today to talk about this year's Award of Excellence honorees in the assistant coaches category. Coach, I know these men are so near and dear to your heart. Some of these men you actually played against, you coached against, and you're extremely familiar with these men. Before we dive in, just like to know your overall feeling when it comes to this award and how important it is to honor these great men.
Well, I think it's so well deserved. And I was an assistant coach for 15 years, and I played for 3 years and benefited from the teachings of my assistant coaches. And I think anybody who's been in the business realizes that that is really the core of what makes our league so great. The teaching, the instruction, the passion that these men have. And we don't always get to see them. We see the Vince Lombardis and the Joe Gibbs and Bill Walshes and the people that win Super Bowls. But the staff behind that is doing the legwork, that is staying there, that's doing the teaching, it's amazing. And I think anybody who's been a head coach, I mean, my biggest job was picking my first staff. And then when you get the right people and you get the Herm Edwards and Lovie Smiths and Mike Tomlins, and you know you're going to have a good team because you've got those quality teachers. And to me, that's what this class represents.
Wow, Coach, you know, it's so exciting because you were once a former assistant coach, coordinator, and all the way to head coach. But just give our viewers and listeners, you know, the hard work that goes into being assistant coach in the NFL.
Yeah, no question about it. You are doing a lot of things behind the scenes. During the season, you're coming in early. You're looking at tape of the next opponent. You're making the game plans. You're preparing the meetings and talking about the game plans with those players. And then even more than that, you're instructing in fundamentals and techniques and how to play the game. Not just, hey, here's my assignment. You're going to cover player X. Okay, how are you going to do it? Here's your technique. And great assistant coaches are they're like gold because they are the ones that really, really develop those players. And I think when you go to the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies and players go in, yes, they're going to talk about their head coach, but always, they're going to talk about that assistant coach who brought them from a young rookie to a seasoned veteran and taught them the game.
And for yourself, during your reception speech into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, you name some assistant coaches. Why was that so important for you to pay homage to those men?
Number one, they were the guys that really trained me. Woody Woodenhofer was our defensive coordinator. Bud Carson was my defensive backfield coach. And those guys taught you how to be professionals and win. And then once you're in it, you recognize the sacrifice that those guys are making. And I actually named 10 African-American assistant coaches who kind of set the bar for me as a young coach. And I wanted to aspire to do what they had done. And one of those guys we're honoring today, and Jimmy Ray. He was one of the 10 who was there.
Wow. Well, Coach, with that being said, let's jump into it. I'm going to shut up. You had the honor and the privilege of announcing this year's Award of Excellence honorees in the assistant coaches category.
Well, our assistant coach category has 5 men who were legendary. They might not be household words to fans, but to anybody who was involved in pro football during the 70s, 80s, 90s, these are just iconic names. And I'm going to start with Alex Gibbs. Alex Gibbs was an offensive line coach, and he was probably most famous for developing the Denver Broncos running game. And Denver had backs that came through there that gained 1,000 yards, and they weren't household words. Terrell Davis is in the Hall of Fame. He was a 6th-round draft choice, but ended up being a 2,000-yard runner because of Alex Gibbs' system. And what Coach Gibbs did, everybody at that time was looking for the big 300, 315-pound offensive lineman. And Coach Gibbs said, you know what? I'm going to build my line with athletes, with quick, fast guys. He got undersized. I said undersized, 275, 280-pound guys who were athletic, could run, could pull, and they perfected the technique called the cut block. And what they did was go low, chop the knees out of the defensive lineman, and when a guy was on the ground, that back would see the hole and make that cut. And it was, Sammy Winder, Orlandis Gary, Terrell Davis. It seemed like every back that came into that system prospered and flourished. Well, Coach Shanahan let Alex Gibbs develop that. Kyle Shanahan was a young man watching that. He put it in and perfected. Now you see what San Francisco is doing with the same type of system. Just all of these runners taking San Francisco to a couple of Super Bowls. Well, it all goes back to Alex Gibbs. And that's one of the reasons why we're honoring him. Another offensive, what I would call offensive genius of those days was a man named Ernie Zampese. And Ernie started out with Don Coryell and the Air Coryell offense. And he tutored Dan Fouts and Charlie Joyner and Kellen Winslow and Wes Chandler. And they had an offense that was just dynamic. And what it was 5 people out in the passing game, quarterback making a decision, going from one side to the other, depending on what he saw from the defense, and involving everyone. It wasn't just, okay, I've got one star receiver, but all 5 of my guys can get open, and the quarterback has to make quick decisions. And he learned from Coach Coryell, and he put it into practice. And the San Diego Chargers, the Superchargers, were an awesome offense. Coach Zampese didn't get a lot of credit then because it was, of course, Coach Coryell, and San Diego didn't win a Super Bowl. But then later on, he went to Dallas and took that system and incorporated it with the triplets, with Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, and that group. And then they won a couple of Super Bowls, and everyone said, wow, this is fantastic. Well, that was Ernie Zampese, but it was the stuff that he learned from Air Coryell back in the late 80s. So it just is a tribute to a guy who just was a fantastic offensive coach. And then we have a couple of guys who are near and dear to my heart. Jimmy Ray was a long-time 40-year assistant coach in the NFL. And Jimmy Ray actually recruited me as a high school player. He was an offensive coordinator at Michigan State University in 1973 when I graduated. He recruited me. I got to know him there. In fact, he was a legendary quarterback at Michigan State. And when I was a 10 and 11-year-old boy, I was Jimmy Ray in the backyard. I wanted to be this guy. He was phenomenal. Well, he ended up going to the NFL, coaching with a lot of different teams, offensive, just dynamic offensive line. And he and I actually created a little history in 1984. I was coaching with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jimmy was the offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. We played a game in Three Rivers Stadium, and it was the first time there was an African-American offensive coordinator going against an African-American defensive coordinator, 1984. And that's early Jimmy Ray. And he went into developing so many people, quarterbacks, assistant coaches. That's one of the things that people don't know. Yeah, he was great with the players, but also developing coaches. Mike McCarthy actually got his start as Jimmy Ray's offensive assistant at Kansas City. And, sometimes we never know those backstories, but Coach Ray has been phenomenal. Another guy on the list who I had a personal touch with is Terry Robisky. Terry Robisky is another longtime coach, started out with the Oakland Raiders, later Los Angeles Raiders. Terry and I were roommates at the East-West Shrine game. He was a running back at LSU. I was a quarterback at Minnesota. We played for the East team in the 1977 East-West Shrine game. That's how we got to become close, got to become good friends, and we stayed friends for the next 40 years. Never coached together. We're always coaching against one another. But Terry was offensive coordinator for Art Shell with the Raiders, playoff teams, great teams with the Raiders, ended up going to Atlanta, Miami, several different places. He played for Don Shula, played for Coach Madden. So just had a lot of background from great coaches and passed that on to people for 40 years. Terry did a lot of work also with the Fritz Pollard Alliance and promoting minority involvement and getting African-American assistant coaches in the NFL. So I think part of this award for him is not only his expertise on the field, but his leadership in helping other coaches off the field as well. Great coach for a number of years as well. Then the last man is Fritz Shurmur. Fritz Shurmur was a defensive mastermind. Now, most of these other guys we talked about have been on offense, but Fritz Shurmur coached for the Rams. He coached for the Green Bay Packers, and most notable for taking that Packers team to the Super Bowl under Mike Holmgren. He had some great players who are now Hall of Famers. Reggie White, of course, we know. Leroy Butler. Fritz Shurmur had the idea of how to utilize him as a blitzer, as a linebacker, as a deep safety, and move him around and get him involved in the game. But he had some tremendous players, but his scheme gave people problems. And I think, once again, did it for a number of years. But when he took a team to the Super Bowl and had that great Green Bay defense, that's when people recognized how special he was. But I think the key ingredient for all these guys was longevity, that they did it over a number of years and with a number of different players, sometimes at different organizations. But I think they kind of epitomize what the assistant coach is all about, doing great work without really getting a lot of notoriety. And that's why I admire this class.
Wow, that's amazing, Coach. And congratulations to these men. Well-deserved. You know, sir, I do not honor envy, excuse me. I honor, but I do not envy the job that you and members of your selection committee had to go through. What was the criteria when you guys were like really shaping this first class of assistant coaches?
It was so hard because, we had so many guys to pick from. And there were so many legendary people. And one of the things we did early on was said that, hey, if a guy went on to be a head coach and get some notoriety, he may have had a great career as an assistant, but he's already kind of gotten recognized. So someone like me who, I coached 15 years as an assistant, but was blessed to be a head coach. We kind of took those guys out of it. And we said, this first class is going to be people who never took that step to the head coaching position, at least permanently. Terry was an interim coach and that, but didn't get that permanent job. So that whittled it down a little bit. But there were still all of these guys who just did phenomenal things. And it was very, very difficult to break it down to 5. It was, but hopefully we'll be able to honor more people in the years to come. And this first class is top shelf.
As you mentioned earlier, Coach, it is so many hours and hard work that goes into being an assistant coach. But when you talked about Terry Robisky and him being an interim head coach, how challenging is that? What are some of the stories that you've heard from your colleagues when they had that opportunity to jump in and be that interim head coach?
Yeah, the challenge is usually you're in a situation where things haven't gone smoothly. You aren't winning. So you have to build on what you have with the players you have there, the staff that you have, but you've got to do something to change the attitude, the atmosphere, and change the culture around. And you want to show that you can do the job and that you should be considered for the permanent job, and you want to build. And it's a difficult job. And Terry did it twice and did it very well. And sometimes when you do that, you kind of are able to show what you can do, and it helps you in terms of getting the next job. But it's not easy because generally you're taking over in midseason in a situation where you aren't winning.
And lastly, Coach, before we let you go, on behalf of you and your colleagues, what did it mean for you and your team to be a part of this first ever Award of Excellence honorees?
We had talked about it among our group for a long, long time that boy, players get recognized, head coaches get recognized, general managers get recognized, but there's a group of people. I remember when Dick LeBeau's name came up, and it kept coming up over and over. And he was a great player. He was a great assistant coach. He had been a head coach for a couple of years. And it just seemed like when we took the totality of his resume, we said, okay, Hall of Famer. But we said, gosh, Dick LeBeau, if he'd have never played and never been a head coach, he still should have been in the Hall of Fame for some of the things that he brought, the schemes that he brought to defense, and the copy that everybody did off of his stuff. So it just seemed fitting that we should have an assistant coaches category. And when the Hall agreed and gave us the assignment, it was just, I think it touched everybody's heart, because we said, finally, we can recognize some of these men who have made just unbelievable contributions that maybe the general public doesn't really know everything about their story.
Right. Well, Coach, there's one coach, I know he's not on this list, and I know eventually one of these days he would, but they just announced Romeo Cannell retiring. And that was, Uncle Rack was so near and dear to my heart, man. And I would be remiss if I didn't say congratulations, Coach.
Absolutely. And he's a guy that really kind of, we weeded out, because we said, well, he's been a head coach, and he's, so he kind of didn't fall into that first group. But he is the epitome of the Hall of Fame assistant coach. 35 years of doing that job, molding men, just going to Super Bowls, building quality defenses, having everybody kind of copy things that they did, and have the respect of players, not only that played for him, but played against them. And, I agree. He'll be in this group very, very shortly.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you carving out some time to join us right here on The Mission to help us wrap up our series. It's been a 4-part series. Our listeners got a chance to hear from members of the equipment managers, the public relations, and the athletic trainers, men that were a part of your support staff. And just to take a step back from that, how important are those vital positions when you look at your former operations?
I'll tell you, Jameer, when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, that's who you think about. You think about all the people that helped you along the way, the equipment staff, the medical staff, the trainers, the player development, just everybody in your staff. People think, well, you've got 16 assistant coaches and you've got 53 players. That's one side of it. But the other side that makes the operation go, they don't always get the recognition. So it's great to see you guys really honor people that have poured their life into the National Football League and done it without a lot of recognition.
I used to tell people when I was an assistant equipment manager and I worked in player development, it was like the NFL for the players was not for long, but for us, it was no family life. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule right now. Yes. Coach, we will be done with is the 13th of June. We will be going through our mini camps, and you have that last week of June, and you go on a vacation, and second week of July, you're at it for the whole entire year. Yep. It's a long season.
You're going to be back in the office. You're going to be preparing things before anybody's there. You're going to be there when everybody's gone, getting things ready for the next day. Things are going to just function seamlessly, and nobody's going to be able to figure out why. Why is my locker all set up and ready to go? Why is my equipment there? If I need shoes because it's raining and I need longer cleats, how do they just magically appear? Well, it's not magic. It's people that work hard and got it done.
That's right, sir. That's right. Well, Coach, thank you once again. Appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, Coach Tony Dungy right here on The Mission.